news. Well, let's talk about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, what he had to say today, and how perhaps Canadians are feeling about it, how he's navigating the situation, and what does it do to the brand. Tony Chapman, CEO of Tony Chapman Reactions, joins us now. Good to see you, Tony.
Good to be here.
So we finally, as Josh and I were just discussing, finally heard from the Prime Minister today. And I think Josh had alluded to something important there. There are people who feel one way about the story, people who feel another way. There's some entrenched camps. I guess the real challenge here is, what does it do to the brand overall to people who haven't already sided with one side or the other?
And I disagree a little bit with Josh. I think people are changing their minds.
Oh, you think? Yeah.
2 weeks ago, for the first time ever, something really stuck to Trudeau. And it was the thing that's the most important when you're voting. Do I trust you? And they had him in a headlock. The Liberal guys completely spun out of control and started to push as opposed to doing what they typically do. Take some time, put the spin doctors in place, and boy, did they come out beautiful this week. First thing they did was, well, we're going to bring Gerald Butts out. He's going to be a softer Gerald Butts, not the alt-right screaming neo-Nazi. We're going to put some pictures of him and McGill with Trudeau, his best friend, and guess what? He took the sword. He resigned for the sake of the party and the greater cause. Then he shows up, lots more humility. What does he do? He discredits one of the most compelling witnesses we've ever seen in Canadians. People had made up, they said, this person's telling the truth, by saying, you know what it's like, Greg, we've had meetings that walk away, we say different things, and then the focus, the great pivot for the Liberals, this isn't about obstruction of justice, this isn't about greasing partisan interest, this is about jobs, our jobs. What does Scheer do? He sits on the sideline, nothing. He still calls for an RCMP, comes out with some GST, as opposed to saying, well, if this is about jobs, let's focus on the state of our economy. Let's focus on whether capital's fleeing our economy. Let's focus on what your record is for creating jobs. But no, he continues to play by the old rules, and the Liberals, who are masters at this, misinformation, misdirection, and move on.
Is it the slow burn? Because right out of the gate, I had the sense that a lot of people, whether they were commentators or even the general public, as you try to weigh their sentiment on social media, would say, that's all you got? Jobs, and perhaps we saw things a different way, but is this a matter of them planting a seed and a slow burn, and hopefully they're hoping at least letting that grow?
Well, great. When you're trying to change perceptions, you can't come at it with a sledgehammer. They tried that 2 weeks ago and they failed. So they plant these seeds. Little seeds of doubt. And suddenly 2 weeks ago, her testimony, but yeah, maybe it was just the way they walked down. Did she really say she'd taken on her interest? Nobody's remembering. Why isn't she allowed to talk after that she's left the Attorney General's portfolio? All sorts of inconsistencies in both Gerald Butts and Trudeau's statements, but it doesn't matter because now the focus, especially Quebec, and we know the Liberals need Quebec, is Trudeau was doing whatever he could to save those 9,000 jobs. That's what our Prime Minister is supposed to do. So that's the new narrative. As opposed to, was this using political pressure, a big support of the Liberal Party, to change the mind of the Attorney General? That's where we were 2 weeks ago. Now it's about, you know what, he's just doing his job. So I think he has done a great job this week of changing behavior. What the Conservatives have to go is go after the weak spot, the economy, and focus again on the credibility of someone from his own party. It's the only time it's ever stuck in 3 years. Trust came out of his own party. They've got to get her back on the stand, and she's got to come back mad as hell, disputing everything we've heard together. And if this dance continues, plays in the hands of Conservatives. If it doesn't, and we shift focus to the budget and pharmacare, the Liberals win the day.
Now, obviously, we're still in the grips of winter in most of the country. I'm honestly thinking once the sun finally starts to show its head, the warm weather comes, if there's not more to the story than what we've already heard, do we forget about it in the spring, in the summer? We still have a long road before the fall election. Can the opposition keep this story in people's minds and keep them angry about it?
No, that's why they've got to shift and focus on what matters most. What Trudeau's playing to is we're feeling insecure about our jobs. He's the savior to protect the jobs. He's playing right to the insecurities of Canadians right now because our economy's weakening. So what Scheer's got to do is actually take that script and say, you know what, if we're concerned about jobs, you've taken on a record deficit, our economy's in a free fall. What are you doing about jobs? Because this is what we will do as Conservatives. And that's a big miss. You know, they always talk about anti-climate change on the Trudeau. What's the platform the Conservatives are going to go forward with? And we know what's going to happen over anything else is the big pharmacare. And then my prediction is they'll tease you with universal income. again playing to my insecurities. Wouldn't it be great to imagine the freedom and have a guaranteed check every day the rest of my life?
Now, as far as political strategy goes, there's a real wild card there, and that's actually the performance of the economy. Any government that's in power is going to wear it. We had a week, as you said, last quarter of last year. Economists aren't expecting much more for the first 3 months of this year. So if we can't turn things around as a country and the economy before the fall election, the Liberals wear it no matter what their message is. So this seems to be the wild card for all the parties. What's the economy going to do?
It's always the wild card in the economy right now. The governor came out today and talked about we're holding back in interest rates. We've lost a half a penny. If the Americans raise the interest rates, we don't. There's a lot of headwind in our economy right now. And a lot of it's not to do with the Parliament, but how people feel. And if I don't feel secure, then I don't have the trust that I once had in my government. And that's where Trudeau's going to be. He's opened up the kimono saying it's about jobs. He better prove it by creating some jobs and not just hiring public sector workers.
Talked about Trudeau's performance, about Andrew Scheer. What about Jagmeet Singh? He has a seat in the House now. He sort of has a forum to push their view on this. Have you been impressed by any part of their strategy?
No, they're trying to inflate their pharmacare bill and everything else, and that's just going to get muddled up and say, if we're going to get pharmacare, we're going to get it by voting the Liberals. He does not resonate. Bernier's keeping quiet because he doesn't want to alienate any Quebec voters. So we're dealing about, it's the Conservatives versus the Liberals, and when it comes down to trust, Scheer has done nothing, in my opinion, to take advantage of 3 years of speed bumps and mishaps and allegedly scandals that are going on in that government. So Trudeau right now is coming out of this week, whether you like it or not, masterful, spin doctors, Liberals, change the conversation, change the consideration from I trusted her beyond belief to, well, maybe he was acting about the best interest in jobs, and she did say she'd think about it again, and plant those seeds, and this thing suddenly goes from being a scandal to kind of the way things are done in Ottawa.
Tony, always great to get your insight.
Thank you.
Tony Chapman is the CEO of Tony Chapman Reactions.